Good afternoon. Welcome to the weekly livestock market update. I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Megan Grebner. With us, as always, is University of Missouri Scott Brown. It looks like you are a road warrior again this week. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Megan. Yep, another week on the road.
So here's we'll say this at the beginning. Scott is traveling, so hopefully his connection stays, but also the battery stays charged as well. So we won't waste any time today. Let's recap what happened this week in the markets.
Yeah, on the cattle side this week, live cattle were $2.60 lower this week, Megan, while those feeder cattle auctions were anywhere to $4 to $5 lower this week. On the future side, tough week this week on the future side of the picture. April live cattle futures contract down $6.20, and the April feeder cattle contract was down $7.30. That was in part due to what was nearly $1 increase in the May corn futures, as we've seen all the volatility on the grain side of the equation. The choice box beef price lost $5.10 this week. On the hog side, cash barrel and gilts 70 cents higher this week. The April lean hog futures contract was also lower, down $3.30. The pork cutout value lost $3.20 on what was weaker belly prices this week.
If I'm going to say anything describes the markets that we've seen in the last week and a half, volatile is probably an understatement, maybe the understatement of the year.
That's correct. So I often tell producers, volatility gives you opportunities, but boy, this extreme volatility we've seen of late certainly calls into question the downside risk as well, I guess.
And I don't know if that's going to stop anytime soon. Scott, as we take a look at slaughter numbers, how are things looking, or how are we shaping up in comparison to last week and last year?
Yeah, if we start on the cattle side this week, Megan, so for the week ending March 5th, USDA says a run of 658,000 head of cattle. That's actually up 11,000 head from where we were a week ago, yet 8,000 head below where we were a year ago. Shorter hog run this week, USDA estimating a run of 2.427 million head of hogs. That's 69,000 head below last week and 130,000 head below where we were a year ago.
We're going to start our report rundown with probably the worst news of all as we take a look at Restaurant Performance Index. Talk to me a little bit about those numbers and how we ended up in January.
Yeah, so we are looking at the January 22 numbers, and I'll remind everyone that that's probably some of the news we have here is related to the Omicron being maxed out about that period of time. But for the January numbers, the overall index fell 1.5% in January. That's after what's been some months of fairly flat for October, November, December. When we look at the breakout there, it was really the current situation index that struggled the most. Same store sales, customer traffic, both were pretty weak here in January. Expectations were down a little bit, but not as much as we saw that current situation index. I kind of wonder when we get the February data if we won't see a little bit of recovery as we see cases of Omicron that decreased as we went through February.
And I would have to assume with some adjustments from the CDC in terms of mask mandates and those types of things, maybe we could see those numbers improve even more as we get into March, April, May timeframe.
Yeah, so you're very correctly. I think there could be some real positives here as we continue to see low case numbers and more openings starting to happen in parts of the country that maybe have been slow in some ways to open. And that could really affect, I think, Restaurant Performance Index and maybe translates right into some better meat demand for us as well.
I'm not sure. When we talk about meat demand, it's wonderful to have the demand, but it's also knowing that we're facing a little bit of maybe some tighter supplies and drought pressure. Again, that could really shape up for a positive price picture for the rest of 2022.
As much as we sometimes worry about inflation in food prices and particularly meat prices, there are scenarios that play out that make food inflation and particularly meat inflation certainly continue as we look here in 2022.
Speaking of cattle numbers, US and Canada cattle and hog inventory numbers came out this week. Scott, as we take a look at those, are there any real big surprises when we look at that information?
So not really big surprises, Megan. It's really driven by the numbers that you and I have reported on the U.S. side in terms of the overall U.S. Canadian total. If you look briefly at a few of these numbers here, so overall beef cow inventory between the two countries down 2.2% in 2022. That mimics very closely the 2.3% that we have lower beef cow inventory here in the U.S. In terms of breeding inventory of sows, we do see a 0.3% increase in the Canadian sow herd, which makes overall Canada-U.S. breeding inventory up 0.1%. But not a lot of change there. It just reminds us that Canada and the U.S. tend to move together pretty much in lockstep.
I think the best numbers that we may have seen this week are in those jobs reports that came out. Really impressive set of numbers for this one.
Yeah, for sure, Megan. So pre-report estimate would have said 440,000 new jobs were going to be added in February. Yet when we got the data today, we came with 678,000. Quite strong job numbers relative to those expectations. But other uncertainties certainly didn't help us on the stock market side. We did see the unemployment rate fall to 3.8% from 4%. So all in all, good news on that job front, which I think again reminds me to say, maybe although we are running high meat prices, we'll continue to grow the economy fast enough to keep meat demand strong.
Scott, as we wind down today, I think, and we start to wrap up for the week, I think the one thing that we do need to talk about, we don't do a ton on poultry. Highly pathogenic avian influenza has been detected in 3 more states this week, or another case, I believe, in Indiana, but then also in Iowa as well as Missouri. As we take a look at this, with the entirety of the uncertainty in the global markets, how does this play out for poultry demand for U.S. poultry? And how do we think about this? I think in terms of regionalization, which they've done so well to keep really all of U.S. poultry, for the most part, available on the market.
Yeah, so I think, we have to continue to watch. It's not surprising to see some spread of high path avian influenza, given where we started here several weeks ago. So the spread's not so surprising. For me, we just have to continue to watch very carefully. Thank goodness we're in a situation where we're able to not see any kind of trade disruption as a result of our cases of high path AI that we've seen of late, and the ability of the industry to make sure to again regionalize in a way that allows for trade to continue. I don't see a big domestic consumer issue here either at this point. Now, let's hope we don't have a significant number of cases starting to come online. But given where we're at, we certainly are still seeing some spread. So we'll watch that one carefully, I think, as we look over the next few weeks.
I think the other thing to remind folks, those birds do not enter the food stream. So they're depopulated as a control measure in case you are concerned or have concerns. And it's not a public health risk either. So it's multiple steps are being ensured to make sure that we can eradicate and stop the spread of this virus and this disease. But also you can be comforted to know that those birds do not enter the food supply chain as well. Right?
That is correct. It's nice to see industry and government working together to take care of these cases of high path AI as quickly as possible.
And that they are doing. Scott, we will let you get back on the road as we look ahead to next week. Another big week for us.
That's right. We start the week here midweek with WASDE. We also get a monthly trade data estimate out midweek, retail prices, and finish the week with consumer sentiment. So you're right, a big week next week.
And I will talk to you from New Orleans. I will be down south for Commodity Classic. So next week I get to be the road warrior.
I'll try to be in the office next week.
All right. So have our weekly livestock market update delivered to your email box every Saturday morning. Go to brownfieldagnews.com. You can also submit questions and comments there. And if you're on the road and need some great listening material, which I can promise you Scott Brown is listening to this afternoon, go to brownfieldagnews.com/podcast. Have a great weekend. I'm Megan Grebner for Brownfield.